December 9th, 1775 was an important battle in the American Revolution in Virginia. It was a little battle. It only lasted about 30 minutes, and it's called the Battle of Great Bridge. Most of you have probably never even heard about this battle. I'm from there. This is where I grew up, and I never once learned about it in school. I never once read about it in any book. All I ever knew about it was that there was a battle there in the American Revolution, and that's it. In fact, in my research, I only uncovered one article in a magazine written about the Battle of Great Bridge. It was so important. It was a short battle. Like I said, only lasted 30 minutes, but Colonel Woodford, he was the colonel who was running in charge of the Patriots. He actually spoke of the Battle of Great Bridge as being like a second battle of Bunker Hill. It was miniature, and with two exceptions, the Patriots held their lines and only one American was wounded in the thumb. The British did not fare quite as well. They lost a little over 100 people, and they wound up surrendering that area. Now, Great Bridge is important, and I'll explain why very quickly. It is the main thoroughfare between the South, which would be North Carolina and the agricultural regions there, and the main port, which would have been Norfolk. It was the only road through the swamp, the massive, dismal swamp that is in southern part of Virginia. Now, this road was called the Great Road, and there was a small bridge called Great Bridge that went over the Elizabeth River. Now, the Elizabeth River on the north side, they describe it as being an island. It's not really an island. It's just a massive, marshy, swampy area. The Lord Dunmore heard about this area. He knew how important the area was, because if they could keep that supply line open, it could literally, with the agriculture, the food, everything coming from the south and the plantations and stuff, it could actually supply an entire army, and he knew this. He knew how important this area was. He sent troops down. They made a small little fort there. It was called Fort Murray because his name was John Murray. He was the 4th Earl of Dunmore, and he, being the governor of Virginia, he had escaped. He was going to set up his little headquarters there in Norfolk. He came down with troops from Norfolk. They set up a small little fort on the north side of the Elizabeth River. Well, he scouted around, looked for American troops. There weren't any. That's because they were on their way. Well, Colonel Woodford was coming from the south, bringing up quite a few hundred soldiers with him. They came onto the south side of the Elizabeth River, and they created a massive amount of breastworks. They were 7 feet high, 150 feet long, and they had places for cannons. It was in the shape of an M. None of this still exists. There are no breastworks anywhere. You cannot find this area. The battlefield is still there, but it's basically beside the main road and kind of in the swampy area. The bridge itself is still in use, not the original bridge, obviously. That has been, they built over top of it with another bridge, but that bridge is still there. It's still just as narrow. The bridge was only wide enough for 6 men to stand side by side to cross the bridge. This was a huge problem, especially when trying to defend that area. Well, there was a spy, which is so awesome because I'm doing my paper on spies. There was a spy who actually went from the American side. He was a black man, and he went over to the British side, and he told the British people some really bad intelligence. He told them that he was defecting to the British and that there were only about 300 Americans and that the British could easily take them because the British had about 700 people. Well, this was really bad intelligence. And based on that intelligence, the British decided that they were going to go ahead and attack. Well, the Americans had approximately 900 patriots on their side. And Colonel Woodford was so intelligent in the fact that he told the men to wait until the British were within 50 yards of the breastworks and then fire. They did. The British came across. They were coming across with their grenadiers. They were coming across with all of their soldiers. And they came up close to the breastworks, and they were fired on. Over 100 British soldiers died. In fact, Captain Fordyce, who was the captain of the British troops, was shot 14 times within a range of 15 feet of the breastworks. They waited until the last minute, and it saved so many American lives. Now, recently, this area has gotten a little bit of notoriety. They've built a small museum there. There's a couple of different things that you can see. All of this has been done literally within the past 15 years. It's not been long. The whole area where the fort was has not been excavated, but there's stuff there. I know there's stuff there because my grandfather went fishing one day in the Elizabeth River right across from where the fort would have been, and he hooked onto and pulled up a rifle. And this rifle was from the Revolutionary War. Of course, for him, he was kind of young and it wasn't important to him, so he threw it back. But we know that this area was fraught with all types of not only Civil War, but tons of revolutionary skirmishes throughout this whole area, and there's so much more to learn. I'm so glad that Virginia is and that whole area of Chesapeake and Great Bridge has really embraced this history, and they have decided to build this museum, and they now have overlooks that you can walk out onto and see where Fort Murray used to be. Hopefully they'll do some maybe LiDAR and excavations, and we'll be able to know exactly where the fort was, and maybe they'll come up with some really cool stuff.